everyone. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Welcome to His Holiness Candramauli Swami daily call. Today we have fortune to have Her Grace Gopika Radhika Mataji with us. She is going to enlighten us in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 11, verse 22 and onwards. Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. Hare Krishna.
So Mataji, should I share the screen or?
Yeah, that would be fine, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank
And then after the verse, I would like to share the screen for my slides, if that's all right.
you. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So just I will give you the, I'll make you co-host. Over to you, Mataji. Thank you.
So Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 11, verse 22. प्रवाभिवादनाश्लेष करस्पर्श स्मितेक्षणैः आश्वास्य चाश्वपाकेभ्यो वरैश्चाभेमतेर्विभुः. Translation: The Almighty Lord greeted everyone present by bowing his head, exchanging greetings, embracing, shaking hands, looking and smiling, giving assurances, and awarding benedictions, even to the lowest in rank. Purport: to receive the Lord Sri Krishna, there were all grades of population, beginning from Vasudev, Ugrasen, and Gargamuni, the father, grandfather, and teacher, down to the prostitutes and chandalas who are accustomed to eat dogs. And every one of them was properly greeted by the Lord in terms of rank and position. As pure living entities, all are the separated parts and parcels of the Lord, and thus no one is alien by his eternal relation. Such pure living entities are graded differently in terms of contamination of the modes of material nature. But the Lord is equally affectionate to all his parts and parcels, despite material gradation. He descends only to recall these materialistic living beings back to his kingdom. And intelligent persons take advantage of this facility offered by the personality of Godhead to all living beings. No one is rejected by the Lord from the kingdom of God, and it remains with the living being to accept this or not. So yeah, we'll be doing only this particular verse today. So reading the translation once more, the Almighty Lord greeted everyone present by bowing his head, exchanging greetings, embracing, shaking hands, looking and smiling, giving assurances, and awarding benedictions, even to the lowest in rank. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So, can I share the screen then, Prabhuji?
Yes, please, Mataji, you can.
Okay. Okay, so these were basically the main points that I want to discuss in today's presentation. The first one is that Krishna consciousness brings true egalitarianism or true equality, and then reasons for apparent differences in Krishna's dealings with different living entities, because although yes, there is equality, but we also see that Krishna deals differently with different people. So why is that? So here we'll be discussing 2 points. First is that material qualifications and disqualifications don't matter. All that matters is bhakti. And then the second point is that the Supreme Lord is impartially partial. So we'll unpack that as the class proceeds. And finally, lessons from all this for our practical application, both in terms of our own worldview or our outlook towards things and people, and also how do we practically implement it in our activities and interactions and dealings. So as we can see in today's verse, this point is very clearly emphasized that as pure living entities, Prabhupada writes in today's purport, all are separated parts and parcels of the Lord, and thus no one is alien by his eternal relation. And such pure living entities are graded differently in terms of contamination of the modes of material nature. So it's very interesting that Prabhupada is making this distinction. He is calling them pure living entities, so which means they are inherently, every single living entity is pure, intrinsically pure, but they are graded differently in terms of contamination of the modes of material nature. And however, as Prabhupada continues to write, the Lord is equally affectionate to all his parts and parcels despite material gradation. So of course, one of the most famous and foundational verses where this is explained is in Bhagavad Gita 5:18, where Krishna says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Shvapakecha Panditaha Samadarshina. So Krishna is explaining the vision of a great saintly person or a sage in this verse, where he says, the humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahman, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater or an outcast, which is a chandal. Today's purport also mentions Chandals, that Krishna was greeted by everyone, right from his elderly father, grandfather, and teacher down to the prostitutes and Chandals. So in this particular Gita verse, Krishna is making this point that the humble sage, because of his vision of true knowledge, he sees all of these people ranging from the Brahmin down to animals, down to animal eaters, even a dog eater. All of them are seen with an equal vision. And so what exactly that means, Prabhupada explains in the purport to this verse, wherein Prabhupada writes, a Krishna conscious person does not make any distinction between species or castes. The Brahmin and the outcast may be different from the social point of view, or a dog, a cow, and an elephant may be different from the point of view of species. But these differences of body are meaningless from the viewpoint of a learned transcendentalist. And why is that? This is due to their relationship to the Supreme. For the Supreme Lord, by his plenary portion as Paramatma, is present in everyone's heart. So as Prabhupada writes in today's purport, that no one is alien to the Supreme Lord. Everyone has an eternal intrinsic relation with the Lord. So that forms the basis of commonality spanning across all species and castes, which is the vision of the Krishna conscious person. He recognizes this commonality, that this is due to their relationship to the Supreme, because the Supreme, by his plenary portion as Paramatma, is present in everyone's heart. Such an understanding of the Supreme is real knowledge. And Prabhupada continues, as far as bodies are concerned, in different castes or different species of life, the Lord is equally kind to everyone because he treats every living being as a friend, yet maintains himself as Paramatma regardless of the circumstances of the living entities. The Lord as Paramatma is present both in the outcast and in the Brahmin, although the body of a Brahmin and that of an outcast are not the same. The bodies are material productions of different modes of material nature, but the soul and the supersoul within the body are of the same spiritual quality. So we can see like there are many, many parallels between this particular purport and today's purport. Even like the language and the terms that Prabhupada uses in many places, they're exactly the same. As Prabhupada writes here, that the Lord is equally kind to and affectionate to all his parts and parcels despite material gradation, and he descends only to recall these materialistic living beings back to his kingdom. No one is rejected by the Lord from the kingdom of God, and it remains with the living being to accept this or not. So yeah, as Prabhupada writes here as well, Lord is equally kind to everyone because he treats every living being as a friend, and that is the reason why no matter how degraded one's external material body may be, Krishna as Paramatma accompanies that living entity all the time, 24/7. And therefore the soul and the super soul are of the same spiritual quality. So as today's purport mentions, such pure living entities are graded differently in terms of contamination of the modes of material nature. So the soul is eternally, intrinsically, it is pure. It is, as the Vedanta Sutra says, asango hyayam purusha. The soul is always intrinsically transcendental to material contamination. So the soul is intrinsically pure, but they end up being created differently because of the contamination of the modes of material nature. But so the equality is in terms of the spiritual quality of the soul and super soul residing within these different conditioned material bodies. And that is why then we see that despite all these differences in material bodies, we find even apparently unexpected personalities becoming great devotees of the Lord. For example, here Prahlad Maharaj says, this is from his prayers in chapter 9, after Lord Nrsimhadev makes his appearance and kills Hiranyakashipu. So Srimad Bhagavatam 799, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, Manye dhana bhijan rupa tapah shruto jas teja prabhava bala paurusha buddhi yogaha naradhanaya hi bhavanti parasya punso bhaktya tutosha bhagavan gaja yuthapaya. Prahlad Maharaj continued, one may possess wealth, an aristocratic family, beauty, austerity, education, sensory expertise, luster, influence, physical strength, diligence, intelligence, and mystic yogic power. But I think that even by all these qualifications, one cannot satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, one can satisfy the Lord simply by devotional service. Gajendra did this, and thus the Lord was satisfied with him. So yeah, as we know, Gajendra, he was not even a human being, he was an elephant. And here he is being mentioned by Prahlad Maharaj in his prayers as one of those glorious devotees who satisfied the Lord and gave him pleasure, invoking the Lord's own presence. The Lord himself came down to save Gajendra. Whereas even all these material qualifications, which are so highly regarded in this material world, they cannot satisfy the Lord, because of course the Lord himself is the source of all these qualifications. So how can one impress the Lord with these things? The reason we have any beauty or austerity or education or sensory expertise, etc., is because Krishna has given a little bit of that to us. So how can we impress Krishna by these qualifications? So yes, this again highlights today's point that the equality is in terms of the spirit soul and the spirit soul's eternal relationship with Krishna. And by dint of reviving that relationship, by dint of doing that by a devotional service, one earns the favor of the Lord, not by any material or external qualifications, as in the case of this elephant Gajendra. And again, we have another very famous verse. I mentioned this in one of our previous classes, but it's very beautiful, so it's always worth mentioning again. This is from Srila Rupa Goswami's Padyavali. It's a verse by Sri Dakshinatya, where it says, "Where were the hunter Dharma's piety, Dhruva's maturity, and Gajendra's knowledge? Where was Kubja's beauty? Where was Sudama's wealth? Where was Vidura's noble birth? Where was Ugrasen's chivalrous strength?" Lord Madhav is pleased only by devotional service and not by material qualifications. And that is the reason we see here that all kinds of people are coming to greet Krishna, right from his grandfather and teacher down to prostitutes and chandals. And Krishna is reciprocating with all of them. Krishna is having affectionate dealings with all of them, compassionate and affectionate dealings. So why is that? Again, the same point, because these external differences do not matter. What matters is this underlying equality of one's intrinsic relationship with Krishna and one's attitude of devotional service to him. This is another very interesting verse from the 11th canto, 12th chapter, where Krishna is saying that in every yuga, many living entities entangled in the modes of passion and ignorance gained the association of my devotees. Thus, such living entities as the Daityas, Rakshasas, birds, beasts, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Nagas, Siddhas, Charanas, Guhyakas, and Vidyadharas, as well as such lower class human beings as the Vaishyas, Shudras, women, and others were able to achieve my supreme abode. So, as Prabhupada writes in today's purport, that Krishna descends only to recall all these materialistic living beings back to his kingdom, and intelligent persons take advantage of this facility offered by the personality of Godhead. No one is rejected by the Lord from the kingdom of God. So here Krishna is giving this whole range of personalities, which includes Daityas, which are an Asura species, and lower class human beings, animals, birds, beasts, everyone were able to achieve my supreme abode, Krishna says. And then he gives specific examples of these personalities. Vritrasur, Prahlad Maharaj, and others like them also achieved my abode by association with my devotees, as did personalities such as Vrishaparva, Bali Maharaj, Banasur, May, Vibhishan. So all these are, as we know, they're from the Daitya, Danava families. Then we have Sugriv, Hanuman, monkey species, Jambavan, bear, Gajendra, elephant, Jatayu, eagle, Tuladhar, Dharmavyad. Dharmavyad was a hunter. Kubja, she was a hunchbacked society girl. And the gopis in Vrindavan, who are the Lord's topmost devotees, and the wives of the Brahmanas, who were performing sacrifice. So all this vast spectrum, this wide spectrum of living entities, all were able to gain the Lord's favor and please Him and attain the ultimate perfection of life because of this underlying equality of opportunity that everyone has to revive one's eternal relationship with Krishna. So, yeah, as we can see here clearly, that Krishna consciousness is the only platform wherein we can have this concept of true egalitarianism, this true equality of opportunity, equality where everyone has the same opportunity, the same facility, the same permission to achieve the highest perfection of life. We see in this world so many attempts have been made throughout the centuries, throughout history, to achieve this at various material levels, and all of them fail. Like we have this communism, so many other attempts where equality has been attempted to be achieved on a material platform, and it all fails because on the material platform it is undeniable that there are differences. Like we see here, there's so many differences. We have demons, we have birds and beasts, we have Gandharvas and Apsaras, we have demigods, we have great devotees. So there's so much difference externally. How can we achieve true equality or true commonness or true fraternity on this level when there's so much variety? So the unity has to be, the concept of unity has to come from something else. And that something else is the living entity's eternal relation with Krishna, which everyone has an equal permission to revive. It, as Prabhupada writes here, it remains with the living being to accept this or not. It's only the living entity's free will, which as soon as one desires to, one has the permission to do that. And therefore, then, okay, yeah, then the logical question that arises is that if everyone is truly equal in Krishna's vision, he's, as Prabhupada writes in today's purport, Krishna is equally affectionate to everyone, then why are there apparent differences in Krishna's dealings with different living entities? And the key lies in this sentence that Prabhupada writes in today's purport, that no one is rejected by the Lord from the kingdom of God, and it remains with the living being to accept this or not. So yeah, it boils down to our free will, which Krishna chooses to respect, because that's the basis of true love. And yeah, again, one of the most foundational verses for this is the Gita verse 929, where Krishna says, Samoham sarva bhuteshu na me dveshyosti na priyaha ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya mai te teshu chapiham. I envy no one nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. And in the purport, Prabhupada begins with this question that one may question here that if Krishna is equal to everyone and no one is his special friend, then why does he take a special interest in the devotees who are always engaged in his transcendental service? But this is not discrimination, it is natural. Prabhupada continues, any man in this material world may be very charitably disposed, yet he has a special interest in his own children. The Lord claims that every living entity in whatever form is his son, and so he provides everyone with a generous supply of the necessities of life. He is just like a cloud which pours rain all over, regardless of whether it falls on rock or land or water. But for his devotees, he gives specific attention. Such devotees are mentioned here. They are always in Krishna consciousness, and therefore they are always transcendentally situated in Krishna. The very phrase Krishna consciousness suggests that those who are in such consciousness are living transcendentalists situated in him. The Lord says here distinctly, Maite, they are in me. Naturally, as a result, the Lord is also in them. This is reciprocal. This also explains the words. So Prabhupada is referring to a previous verse in the Gita, this is from the 4th chapter, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tans tathaiva bhajamiham. Whoever surrenders unto me, proportionately, I take care of him. So yeah, as Prabhupada mentioned, it's reciprocal. Proportionately, Krishna reciprocates the way one deals with Krishna. This transcendental reciprocation exists because both the Lord and the devotee are conscious. When a diamond is set in a golden ring, it looks very nice. The gold is glorified, and at the same time, the diamond is glorified. The Lord and the living entity eternally glitter, and when a living entity becomes inclined to the service of the Lord, he looks like gold. The Lord is a diamond, and so this combination is very nice. Living entities in a pure state are called devotees. The Supreme Lord becomes the devotee of his devotees. And then, referring back to the point that Prabhupada mentioned earlier, that this transcendental reciprocation exists because both the Lord and the devotee are conscious. The Prabhupada is again emphasizing this. If a reciprocal relationship is not present between the devotee and the Lord, then there is no personalist philosophy. In the impersonal philosophy, there is no reciprocation between the Supreme and the living entity. But in the personalist philosophy, there is. So it's not a mechanical relationship. The Lord is a person. He's a sentient, he's a thinking, feeling person. And the living entities are also thinking, feeling individual persons. So just as there exist all these dealings between us in this material world, we can see between two living entities. Just like Prabhupada gave this example when he was going on a walk in a park, and there were devotees. I'm not sure if there were devotees or there were some other people who were feeding the ducks in the park. And so some of the ducks who were quacking the loudest, they were being given the most food. And Prabhupada said, why is that? It's because that's a natural reciprocal reaction. The duck which is quacking the loudest, the person who's giving food is automatically inclined to give more food to that particular duck. So similarly, everyone is Krishna's child. The Lord is equally favorably inclined to everyone. But because he is a thinking, feeling person, and the living entity is also a thinking, feeling person, so that person who calls out the most to the Lord automatically attends to that person, automatically gives more attention to that person. So that is the beauty of the personalist philosophy as opposed to the Mayavada, the impersonal philosophy, where everything is regarded as mechanical or impersonal. And that is why then we see that there are these differences between Krishna's dealings with different kinds of living entities based on their own attitudes and dealings with Krishna. So this is another verse very pertinent to this particular point. This is from the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam. It's being spoken by Prahlad Maharaj to Lord Vamandev. And Prahlad Maharaj is saying, "Oh my Lord, your pastimes are all wonderfully performed by your inconceivable spiritual energy. And by her perverted reflection, the material energy, you have created all the universes. As the super soul of all living entities, you're aware of everything. And therefore, you are certainly equal towards everyone. Nonetheless, you favor your devotees. This is not partiality, however, for your characteristic is just like that of a desire tree, which yields everything according to one's desire." And in the purport, Prabhupada explains, the Supreme Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is certainly equal toward all living entities. But a devotee who fully surrenders at the lotus feet of the Lord is different from a non-devotee. In other words, so this is where we come to that point about the Supreme Lord being impartially partial. That in other words, everyone can take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord to enjoy equal benedictions from the Lord. So as we said before, there is egalitarianism, there is equality of opportunity. Everyone can take shelter and enjoy equal benedictions from the Lord. But non-devotees do not do so, and therefore they suffer the consequences created by the material energy. We can understand this fact by a simple example. The king or government is equal to all citizens. Therefore, if a citizen capable of receiving special favors from the government is offered such favors, this does not mean that the government is partial. One who knows how to receive favors from the authority can receive them, but one who does not neglects these favors and does not receive them. There are two classes of men, the demons and the demigods. The demigods are fully aware of the Supreme Lord's position, and therefore they are obedient to him. But even if demons know about the supremacy of the Lord, they purposely defy his authority. And therefore, the Lord makes distinctions according to the mentality of the living being. But otherwise, he is equal to everyone. Like a desire tree, the Lord fulfills the desires of one who takes shelter of him. But one who does not take such shelter is distinct from the surrendered soul. One who takes shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord is favored by the Lord, regardless of whether such a person is a demon or a demigod. So the opportunity is, so this phrase impartially partial very nicely actually captures this particular point. I first heard this phrase from in a class by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, where it very accurately describes this point that Krishna is impartially partial in the sense that he makes the opportunity to take shelter of him equally available to everyone. And so those who make use of that opportunity, then they receive, as Prabhupada says here, the citizen who takes the opportunity to receive special favors from the government receives those favors. Similarly, living entities who take the opportunity of taking shelter of Krishna, they receive that favor of Krishna, which Krishna gives to his devotees. And those who neglect those favors don't receive them. So yeah, there is equality, but at the same time, there is discrimination because of the principle of reciprocation. And that is why we see, like, as Prabhupada points out in this really good example, right? I mean, the government is equal to all citizens, and still we see that, some citizens, they just lead mediocre lives. There are some citizens who achieve very prestigious awards from the government. There are some citizens who find themselves imprisoned by the government, right? So, the government is equal to everyone. Similarly, as Prabhupada would say, the judge, right? In one case, he awards a death sentence to someone, or in another case, he gives a huge cash reward to someone. So is the judge being partial? No, but it is because of the activity or the activity of the citizen himself that he earns these different reactions from the judge or from the government. So it's the same case with the Lord. So as we saw here, Krishna consciousness brings to egalitarianism, and the reasons for apparent differences in Krishna's dealings is because of the reciprocal relationship that exists between Krishna and the living entities. Those who seek shelter of Krishna are favored by Krishna, especially as devotees, and those who neglect Krishna's attempts to bring them back to him, they don't manage to take advantage of those favors which Krishna is making equally available to everyone. And now, how does this translate to our practical application? So one of the points is, of course, obvious, which is it shapes our worldview. It gives us a vision of true equality and universal fraternity. So as we mentioned before, Bhagavad Gita 5:18, the humble sage sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. And that in turn brings true world peace, because we can see everyone equally. We don't get caught up with these external superficial differences between living entities. As Krishna says in the last verse of the 5th chapter, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So the devotee knows that Krishna is the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. So that provides the basis for a devotee having a compassionate and friendly and equal vision attitude towards all living entities. So that is a worldview of equality that it gives us. And at the same time, we see that it also teaches us to demonstrate appropriate and intelligent differences in terms of our practical dealings. Because if we observe closely in today's verse, it is stated that the Almighty Lord greeted everyone present. So how did he greet everyone present? There are very different dealings: by bowing his head, exchanging greetings, embracing, shaking hands, looking with smiles, giving assurances, and awarding benedictions. So the way Krishna greets everyone is not the same. He's not doing the same thing with everyone, right? With some, he's bowing his head. With some, he's just smiling. With some, he's shaking hands. To some, he's awarding benedictions. And Prabhupada explains this in the purport that to receive the Lord Sri Krishna, there were all grades of people, beginning from Vasudeva, Ugrasen, and Garg Muni, down to the prostitutes and chandals. And every one of them was properly greeted by the Lord in terms of rank and position. So this is worth noting, in terms of rank and position. Again, we have this, there is equality, and at the same time, there is a difference in terms of the dealings. So we can see, in one sense, our Vedic worldview, our Vedic theology, it is so flexible. It is universal as well as flexible. There's always this concept of unity and diversity. We recognize commonalities underlying everything, and at the same time, there is a recognition that we need to behave differently with different people in different times, places, and circumstances. So Prabhupada explains this. This is one example where Prabhupada addresses this point. This is from a lecture where Prabhupada says, when a devotee sees a cat or a dog, he sees Krishna in him. He knows that a cat, for instance, is a living being, and that due to his past deeds, he has received the body of a cat. This is due to his forgetfulness. The devotee helps the cat by giving it some Krishna prasad, so that someday the cat will come to Krishna consciousness. This is seeing Krishna in the cat. The devotee does not think, oh, here is Krishna. Let me embrace this cat and serve this cat as God. So yes, there is equality, but at the same time, there is intelligent discrimination. The cat is not worshipped as Krishna. The devotee recognizes Krishna is present as Paramatma in the cat. This cat is a spirit soul who has an eternal relationship with Krishna. So let me do what I can to revive this eternal relationship by, as Prabhupada writes here, the devotee can help the cat by offering it Krishna prasad, but the devotee will not start worshipping the cat as Krishna himself. Such thinking is nonsensical, Prabhupada continues. If one sees a tiger, he does not say, oh, here is Krishna, come on, please eat me. The devotee does not embrace all beings as Krishna, but rather sympathizes with every living being, because he sees all beings as part and parcel of Krishna. In this way, the true yogi observes me in all beings. This is real vision. So yeah, I mean, nothing is mechanical, nothing is pedantic. Everything is very logical and reasonable in our Vedic philosophy, in our Bhagavad philosophy. We see a philosophy which is so universal that it encompasses all living entities under one umbrella. And at the same time, it's not utopian to the extent of being impractical. There is no utopia over here. There is a recognition of the practical necessity of dealing differently with different people, and of course, changing our behavior according to time, place, and circumstances also. There's full universality as well as flexibility. And we see a very interesting example of this in Kapil Shiksha and Lord Kapila's teachings to his mother Devhuti in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:29, verses 26 to 33. Where Lord Kapil Dev, he says that as the blazing fire of death, I cause great fear to whoever makes the least discrimination between himself and other living entities because of a differential outlook. So in one sense, this is a very strong verse. Kapil Dev is saying that, yeah, one should not make the least discrimination between himself and other living entities because of a differential outlook. One should have a completely equal vision. Then he goes on to say, therefore, through charitable gifts and attention, as well as through friendly behavior, and by viewing all to be alike, one should propitiate me, who abides in all creatures, as their very self. So he says that through all these good dealings, through charitable gifts and attention and friendly behavior, etc., one should deal with all living entities in this way, thinking that one is actually worshipping the Supreme Lord who is residing in all these creatures. So with that attitude, one should behave nicely. One should have this kind of approach to all living entities, knowing that Krishna as Paramatma is within all living entities. So yeah, so far we have seen one should have an equal vision. One should behave with all living entities very nicely because the Lord is present in everyone. But now we get this verse where he says, living entities are superior to inanimate objects, O Blessed Mother. And among them, living entities who display life symptoms are better. Animals with developed consciousness are better than them. And better still are those who have developed sense perception. So just now we had this very strong verse emphasizing an equality of vision. And immediately afterwards, there starts a description of hierarchy. This is superior to this is superior to that, this is superior to that, you know. Then he goes on, among the living entities who have developed sense perception, those who have developed the sense of taste are better than those who have developed only the sense of touch. Better than them are those who have developed the sense of smell, and better still are those who have developed the sense of hearing. Better than those living entities who can perceive sound are those who can distinguish between one form and another. Better than them are those who have developed upper and lower sets of teeth, and better still are those who have many legs. Better than them are the quadrupeds, and better still are the human beings. And then again, there is a gradation even among human beings. So Lord Kapil says, among human beings, the society which is divided according to quality and work, which is Varnashram, is best. And in that society, the intelligent men who are designated as Brahmanas are best. Among the Brahmanas, then again, even within the Brahmanas, there is a hierarchy. Among the Brahmanas, one who has studied the Vedas is the best. And among the Brahmanas who have studied the Vedas, one who knows the actual purport of the Vedas is the best. And then we have someone who is even higher than the Brahmanas. Better than the Brahman who knows the purport of the Vedas is he who can dissipate all doubts. And better than him is one who strictly follows the Brahminical principles. Better than him is one who is liberated from all material contamination. And better than him is a pure devotee who executes devotional service without expectation of reward. So this is the highest of all. Therefore, Lord Kapil says, I do not find a greater person than he who has no interest outside of mine, and who therefore engages and dedicates all his activities and all his life, everything unto me without cessation. So yeah, a very vivid example of the same unity in diversity principle there, where there is an equal emphasis given on equality of vision, but at the same time, an equal emphasis given on recognizing differences between living entities in terms of their guna and karma and other material characteristics, and dealing with them appropriately in terms of those differences. And Prabhupada explains that in his purport to the first verse in this chain of verses. He says, in the previous verse, it was explained that living entities should be honored by charitable gifts and friendly behavior. And in this verse, and in the following verses, the description of different grades of living entities is given so that one can know when to behave friendly and when to give charity. So yeah, there has to be differences in dealings. It's just inevitable. Like Prabhupada said earlier, one cannot embrace the tiger and say, yes, please come on, eat me. So the description of different grades is given so that we know how to behave differently with different people. For example, yeah, Prabhupada again gives the example of tiger. A tiger is a living entity, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. But does this mean we have to treat the tiger in a friendly manner? Certainly not. We have to treat him differently, giving him charity in the form of prasad. And then Prabhupada continues, the many saintly persons in the jungles do not treat the tigers in a friendly way, but they supply prasad foodstuffs to him. The tigers come, take the food, and go away, just as a dog does. So yeah, and this is really important. Prabhupada says, the feeling of equality must be there, but the treatment should be discriminating, because that's just inevitable. Just how discrimination should be maintained is given in the following 6 verses concerning the different grades of living conditions, which is the series of verses we read just now, where the entire hierarchy is given, right, from inanimate objects to the learned Brahman, all the way up to a pure devotee of the Lord, who is fully absorbed in the Lord's devotional service. And then we find the same principle even in terms of our Acharya's instructions regarding how we deal with each other in the society of devotees. So in the Nectar of Instruction, we have Srila Rupa Goswami. He says, Dadati pratigrihnati guhyamakhyati prichati bhunte bhojayate jaiva shadvidham priti lakshanam. Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad and offering prasad are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. So initially he's given this broad spectrum of various loving dealings that are shared amongst devotees. And then immediately afterwards, there is this description starting in verse 5 of Updeshamrit, one should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name of Lord Krishna. One should offer humble obeisances to the devotee who has undergone spiritual initiation, Diksha, and is engaged in worshipping the deity. And one should associate with and faithfully serve that pure devotee who is advanced in undeviated devotional service and whose heart is completely devoid of the propensity to criticize others. So yeah, again, the same thing. There is equality at the same time. There is a recognition of the fact that there are differences, and those differences will govern the way we are supposed to deal with different people. And the purport Prabhupada to this Updeshamrit verse, Prabhupada writes, in order to intelligently apply the sixfold loving reciprocations mentioned in the previous verse, one must select proper persons with careful discrimination. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore advises that we should meet with Vaishnavas in an appropriate way according to their particular status. In this verse, he tells us how to deal with three types of devotees, the Kanishtadhikari, Madhyamadhikari, and Uttamadhikari. The Kanishtadhikari is a neophyte who has received the Harinam initiation from the spiritual master and is trying to chant the holy name of Krishna. One should respect such a person within his mind as a Kanishta Vaishnava. A Madhyamadhikari has received spiritual initiation from the spiritual master and has been fully engaged by him in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The Madhyamadhikari should be considered to be situated midway in devotional service. The Uttamadhikari, or highest devotee, is one who is very advanced in devotional service. An Uttamadhikari is not interested in blaspheming others. His heart is completely clean, and he has attained the realized state of unalloyed Krishna consciousness. According to Srila Rupa Goswami, the association and service of such a Mahabhagavat or perfect Vaishnava are most desirable. Nectar of Instruction, verse 5, purport. So yeah, this verse, today's verse, is a very beautiful depiction of this universality as well as flexibility in our Vedic outlook, which ranges right from our worldview with regards to inanimate objects and living entities that are lower than human beings, all the way to different kinds of human beings, all the way to Brahmanas, and then different varieties of Brahmanas, and even devotees. Devotees are the highest personalities in all of human society, in all of society at large. And then even among devotees, as our acharyas point out, there are gradations, and we recognize and deal with different devotees accordingly. So yeah, there is no utopia, there is no impracticality, there are no unreasonable demands being made. Our philosophy is one which is highly scientific, it's highly universal, it's highly compassionate. It achieves a level of equality and compassion, and equality of opportunity that simply does not exist anywhere in this material world. And at the same time, it does not make any unreasonable or impractical demands of us. It validates us in making intelligent discriminations between different situations, different people, and tailoring our responses to different living entities, to different situations, different time, place, and circumstances accordingly. So it's very scientific, very compassionate, and very practical way of looking at things and dealing with things. So yeah, with this, I would like to conclude, Prabhuji, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Such a wonderful class. And sorry, you nicely summarized, in fact, impartially partial. Yeah. And how Krishna is equal to everyone. And also various practical tips and examples to all of us, and how devotional service is the topmost service and priority, in fact, for everyone, as Krishna does not differentiate based on material qualification, disqualification, or material position. And also you very nicely summarized and in fact emphasized on how devotees should deal with other living entities. Very important. So thank you very, very much. So Hare Krishna, dear devotees, if you have any questions, comments, or realizations, please unmute yourself If you would like to type in chat window, I can read on your behalf. And also would request if you would like to, if you can switch on your videos. Mataji, Janva, Mataji has put one question, Mataji, here. I put a question to see if I have understood well. Krishna is equal with devotees, but can we say that he is not equal with non-devotee and devotee in the same way? Because he knows which one are non-devotees.
Yeah, just to confirm, yes, Mataji, this is correct. Just to confirm if I've understood this correctly. So you're basically saying that Krishna is, okay, not equal with non-devotees and devotees in the same way because he knows which ones are non-devotees. Yeah, basically, so the point is that Krishna acknowledges everyone as being his eternal part and parcel. So Krishna inherently has the same affectionate feelings for every living entity. The way a parent equally loves all his or her children. But at the same time, as Prabhupada would say, the baby who's crying the loudest, the mother rushes to attend to that baby first. So similarly, Krishna, he's equally affectionate to everyone, and he equally wants each living entity to come back to him, and therefore he makes equal attempts to bring everyone back to him by coming down as incarnations, by delivering his teachings in the form of, for example, the Bhagavad Gita and Kapil Shiksha, Uddhav Gita, etc., by making the Vedic literatures available to everyone, by sending his devotees, etc. He makes equal attempts to get everyone back to him. But now, after all this, so until here, everything is equal. Now, when the living entities, based on their own free will, the way they reciprocate with these attempts of Krishna, Krishna in turn reciprocates with them. So those who take advantage of Krishna's attempts to bring them back to him, Krishna favors them. As Krishna says, for the devotees, like Krishna's primary quality is Bhakta Vatsalya. He knows, like he said to Durvasa Muni, right? Sadhavo hridayam mahyam sadhu nam hridayam tuham madanyatte na jananti naham tebhyo manadivi. That my devotees are always in me, I am within them, and my devotees do not know anything but me, and I do not know anyone but my devotees. So he develops that kind of feeling for those who voluntarily, out of their own free will, choose to become his devotees. And those who remain neglectful of that, they do not receive that favor. Yes, Krishna is Paramatma, he still keeps persisting in his attempts to bring them back to him. But those who are already taking advantage of those attempts, they definitely, in reciprocation, they get special favor of Krishna because that's just reciprocal. It's natural, as Prabhupada says. So yeah, in that way, then we see that there are differences in the way Krishna deals with devotees and with non-devotees. And then, of course, I mean, even though everyone is his part and parcel, but those who actively offend his devotees or harm his devotees, then Krishna does not spare them because Krishna cannot tolerate any offense towards his devotees. And that is what we see in the case of, for example, Durvasa Muni. And Krishna's Sudarshan Chakra chased him through all the three planetary systems, and even Lord Vishnu refused to do anything for him. He said, "You'll have to apologize to my devotee," because that is the level of reciprocation that a devotee enjoys with Krishna. So in that way, there are differences. But otherwise, yeah, Krishna wants equally that everyone should come back to him. And he makes equal attempts to bring everyone back to him. It's kind of like Prabhupada would also give the example, right? That the sunlight, it is shining on everything. But now if one voluntarily retreats into a dark room where no sunlight can touch that person, then it's not the sun's fault. So that is basically the case of those who end up not receiving Krishna's favor. So Krishna is making it available, but they actively choose to keep themselves removed from that favor. And in that way, they don't receive it. Does that address your point, Mataji? I'm not sure actually if I've addressed it, if I've answered your question.
Janva Mataji, I hope Gopika Radhika Mataji has answered. Yeah, she's saying yes. Thank you. I will
Okay.
meditate on it. Good.
Okay, thank you, Mataji.
Yes, Revati Mataji, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much for this very detailed class. I have a question, Mataji. You explained it very detailed, but would like to again clarify with you. The verse 9.29, where you explained about personalist versus impersonalist, how personalists they think and feel, and all that. Could you please explain that again?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so basically, Prabhupada is making this point that Krishna, the reason why a reciprocal relationship exists between Krishna and his devotees is because of this personal, because of the fact that both Krishna and the devotees are individual persons. And Krishna is a thinking and feeling person. The devotees are thinking and feeling persons. And therefore, when a devotee makes an extra effort to please Krishna, Krishna automatically feels obliged to that devotee. He feels affection for that devotee and he reciprocates accordingly. So it is not a mechanical procedure. Krishna is not some impersonal light or some mechanical God who he has feelings and he recognizes the worshipper's feelings and he reciprocates with those feelings of the worshipper. So as Prabhupada gives the example, right, that a person may be very charitably disposed, but at the same time, he has a special corner in his heart for his own children. And that is a natural byproduct of being a person with feelings. And that is what Krishna is also. That is why as Prabhupada wrote in his poem encapsulating Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's mission, right? And the two lines of that poem which Saraswati Thakur liked the most was that absolute is sentient, thou hast proved, impersonal calamity, thou hast removed. And so sentient, I'll just look up the dictionary meaning of sentient is a very specific word, which just 1 second. Yeah, sentient means able to perceive or feel things. So yeah, this was what Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur appreciated the most about that poem which Srila Prabhupada wrote about his mission, that Saraswati Thakur has proved that the absolute truth, the God Almighty, he is a sentient being. He is an individual person who has feelings. And when a devotee approaches him with love and affection, Krishna can sense that. And he feels, in a reciprocal way, he also feels affection and love for that devotee. It's not a mechanical process. We are not dealing with just some vague light or some divine power. We are dealing with an actual person, the supreme person. And that forms the basis of these reciprocal dealings.
Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. So beautifully explained. Like basically, you're expressing your feelings. That's how you're connecting with Krishna. Like because Krishna is also a person.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that is why one of Krishna's names is, right, it's Bhav Grahi Janardana. He's able to sense the bhav of the devotee. The externals don't matter. He is able to sense the bhav and he's able to reciprocate in that exact same manner to like we cannot find anyone who reciprocates as well as Krishna. No one can reciprocate in any of the rasas, whether it's as a friend, whether it's as a lover, as a son, as a master. No one can reciprocate as well as Krishna. Because Krishna is the best person who can understand our feelings to the core and reciprocate in exactly a manner befitting those feelings.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. So beautifully explained the difference between impersonalist and personalist. Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna?
You hear me? Yeah,
Yes, Prabhuji, I can
such
hear you.
obligations is so glorious. It's the power of God. Very nice lecture. A lot of references and linked them so wonderfully. Clearly, Krishna has blessed you with a lot of intelligence, and you've used it in this lecture. It's quite clear.
Thank you for your
Now,
kind
when you
words.
talk,
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. You talked about relationships. I just want to see if I've understood you well. So I'm going to put it in a different way, and then you just tell me whether this fits. So the way he relates to living entities is based on his love for them. Krishna loves everyone, but the person love is obviously a reciprocal thing. It's an exchange, love and exchange. Therefore, if a devotee then turns to Krishna, or if a person turns, we call him a devotee, but a person that turns to Krishna and shows love to Krishna receives love from Krishna also. Everybody else, everybody else is loved by Krishna true enough, but Krishna does not interfere with what they want to do with the material energy. So if they think that the material energy is so satisfying in so many ways to them, and therefore they want to deal with that, then Krishna leaves them alone to deal with that. But those who know, those who know that Krishna is supreme, that wants to come to Krishna, everything is practically solved and the happiness would come. They turn to Krishna by the help of the spiritual master, and therefore Krishna also reciprocates, and they feel the love of the Lord. That's the way I was kind of understanding it. Is that acceptable? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji, I would say so, definitely. You put it nicely.
Thank you. You are very, 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 very detailed in your explanation. I like that very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for encouragement, Prabhuji. Thank you.
So thank you very much for all these nice questions. Do devotee have any last question?
Hare Krishna. I'd like to make another point. This is just a comment. It's not a question. I was just very intrigued by how Krishna was relating to everybody. This is back to the original text or translation. Based on their rank. That's the sweetness of Krishna. She's so sweet that he will relate just so the person who has a particular rank feels comfortable at that rank. It's beautiful. It's only the Lord would do something like that. Just make sure that the relationship comes across far more personally, because the person is at a certain certain level, use certain type of thinking, use certain type of, even the things that they do. He takes all of that into consideration, and at the same time, he's being sensitive to the custom. To the custom, right? And so he takes all of that into consideration where he is at. So sometimes he will shake hands, sometimes he will bow his head, sometimes he will do some things. It's just wonderful. That's just wonderful. I could expand it a little more by connected to his renunciation, but that's another topic for another time. So I won't get into that. But it's just we can learn so much from how Krishna behaves in different situations. So that's not a question, just a comment. That's all. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. That was a beautiful comment. Thank you so much for that, adding that.
Looks like Mataji, there is no further question and comment. So we are also just on dot time. So with your permission, if it's okay, we can close the session.
Sure, Prabhuji. Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gopika, Radhika, Mataji. It was really, really amazing session. Really, so much, really, lots of beautiful points, references, as Parikshit Prabhu also mentioned. So really appreciate that. Thank you, devotee, for joining today's session. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Her Grace Gopika Radhika Mataji ki jai. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai. Vanchikalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Atita Nam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah.
Jai. Guranga.
Jai.
Thank you, Mataji.